Hello, and welcome back to Pod Valaika. We have not recorded since the playoffs ended back in October, or was it actually early November? I don't know. Regardless, we haven't recorded in quite a bit, and lots of people on their holiday break. So we figured we'd use this opportunity to have two new guests join the show. We are joined by Jay and Nolan. Say hello, Jay, and say hello, Nolan.
Hi, I'm Jay, Jay Mays Hayes on Twitter. I'm a freshman at Florida Gulf Coast University,
The
and I'm
Dunk
an accounting
City.
major. The Dunk City. And I'm an accounting major, and I'm involved in sports broadcasting.
And I am Nolan. Some of you may know me on Twitter at the only Nolan with an I instead of an L. I do not go to college in Florida, unfortunately. I barely go to college at all, but I do. I'm a big Orioles fan. I'm a big Rams fan, assuming this will be coming out before the Rams Ravens game on Sunday. And because Jordan hates me mentioning it, I'm a Wizards and Capitals fan as well.
Ooh. And I am Jordan. I've posted all of these. I feel like you know my bio by now, and if you don't, whatever. I'm not that concerned with it. So, this is a holiday special. So, why don't we start by telling the audience and each other what you did on Christmas and what you're planning to do on New Year's Eve?
Jay, you have the floor.
All right. Well, for Christmas, I got some Chinese food and basically spent the day at home. And then I found out that Wawa was open, and I went there and got a sandwich.
Beautiful.
I do like Wawa. I do like Wawa. On Christmas, I think I'm the only one in this call that opened presents. And then I went to work, and what did I have for dinner on? Oh, we had buffalo wings.
Is that a tradition? Like, I
Yeah, it is. Every Christmas and Thanksgiving, my dad and I love my mom's wings. She makes the best wings either of us have ever had. It's her homemade sauce, makes it from scratch. It's really really good. So random football Sundays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, we do bar food instead of like a traditional thing. So it's like wings, mozzarella sticks, jalapeno poppers, tater tots, stuff like that. It's really good, and I look forward to Thanksgiving in my household more than any other Thanksgiving I've ever been a part of because of this.
that honestly sounds lovely. I enjoy non-traditional traditions.
Yes.
Quite the sentence. Myself, I continued the time-honored Jewish tradition of seeing a movie. I saw Licorice Pizza starring Alana Haim of the band Haim. They have lovely music. You should listen to it. I had chicken lo mein because we got Chinese food. I watched basketball. I refused to watch most of the NFL. Like, I feel like there's some traditions that have to be sacred, and watching the NFL over the NBA on Christmas is one where I'm just going to draw the line. Like, the NFL can have like every other occasion. Christmas should belong to the NBA, and that is a position that I deeply and strongly believe in.
I agree with that. I also watched the NBA.
I didn't watch any basketball. I watched football.
Shame.
How dare you?
I know.
Shame.
I know.
The
Okay.
Lakers looked bad, so I can just say that.
Yeah, I do not have strong NBA takes other than I hope all the Maryland players do well because I am proud of them. Okay, so the most recent thing resembling Orioles news is that Buck Showalter got hired to manage the Mets pretty recently. And that seems pretty newsworthy because he is one of the most successful managers in Orioles history, led them to 3 postseasons in 5 years, ended a very long postseason drought, and is probably one of the most well-respected figures in franchise history. And now he's managing the Mets. So let's start with a simple question. How much will you be rooting for the Mets this year?
Not at all.
Really?
I
Really?
love I love Buck Showalter. I do. But I cannot bring myself to like the Mets in any capacity whatsoever. I don't know why. I just something about them rubs me the wrong way. But like I love certain players on the Mets. Like Jacob deGrom, I feel so bad for that guy. I just I hate the fact that he's on a team that can't offensively produce for him. Like he's their best offensive player when he pitches in a game. He's like National League Shohei Otani. But like watered down offensive Shohei Otani, but like better. I don't know if there's like a scale where it evens out because DeGrom is so much better than Otani at pitching, but so much worse at Otani than hitting. But does that make him even to Otani? No, obviously not. But I'm just like, yeah, I won't be rooting for the Mets at all. No, fuck the Mets.
Hey! This is a family program.
I didn't know that. Sorry.
No, I mean I don't care. Let's just
Okay.
make sure we don't do anything worse than that.
I mean, I really like the Mets. I think that they're a really fun team at this point with Buck. I know that he said that he wanted to be more analytical with Baltimore. I don't know how much I believe that, but it seems like with more money, he seems to have more fun. I think with Scherzer, it's definitely looking like a really, really fun franchise. But I think that any New York team kind of just has this overarching like weight and cloudiness of like a toxic fan base. So I guess it kind of just gets into the fan base that kind of ruins it. But I think that any team that's kind of like a rival of the Nats is a good team.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Mets are part of a very sacred holy trinity of hatred, of hating the Yankees just for like playing them regularly, the Nats for playing them regularly in geography and all that, and also the Royals for a immensely frustrating postseason series defeat. There are only two teams that have legitimate reasons. They have the Yankees, the Nationals, and the Royals, and it's the Orioles and the Mets. So I feel like there is a unique connection between having beef with the Yankees and the Nats through just playing them regularly, and then having beef with the Royals because they ended like your best season of the 2010s. So I've always felt there's like a very unique connection of that specific bond of two teams from just being geographic rivals, and then one team where you previously presumably didn't have an opinion on them and now hate them for like the rest of your lives. Like I don't think there were any Orioles fans in 2013 who hated the Royals, but now I hope they get moved to Nashville. They should be the ones that deal with that, in my humble opinion. So yeah, I'll definitely be rooting for the Mets. In general, I just find most of the NL East to be pretty. I just find it to be intriguing. Like you've got like big markets, you've got lots of talent. I'm gonna root for the Mets, but I'm also gonna kind of root for the Phillies because I feel bad for the fact that they've had a pretty long postseason drought, and like I feel it'd be good for baseball if Bryce Harper was in the playoffs again and all that. I mean, I guess I'm not really gonna root for the Braves. Like if you're defending champions, like whatever. But I was definitely sort of like sympathetic to them. Like it feels like they have cool talent and everything else. The Marlins, they're just kind of
the only reason I somewhat liked the Braves in any capacity was Nick Markakis and Ron Washington. That's it.
Yeah, I feel like the Braves were also that team that kind of felt like a fun team. I think that I support any team that has like young talent that feels fun. It seems like they're just generally a good like all around kind of fun team. And then you've got Freddie, and Freddie's just like a general like baseball guy. You know, everyone loves him.
yeah. So I mean, I'm certainly not gonna be a Nats fan, but I found the rest of the NL East to be a pretty likable division. Like in general, like I don't have much beef with like anyone in the NL because they just don't play the Orioles. But like I feel like you can find reasons to root for the Mets, to root for the Phillies. I think less so the Braves now they're defending champions. Like I don't want to see them win the World Series again. That's boring. And the Marlins, like the Marlins are, I think, pretty underrated for like the weirdest franchise in American sports. Like how many teams have won like 2 World Series and then like immediately blown up their roster like each time they did? Like that is so bizarre. Like they're like a miniature version of like the Giants, New York, not San Francisco, in terms of like, yeah, like they won twice and everything like since then has just been like, what's the deal with this? What's going on here?
I like the Marlins because I'm now localized in Florida, and they also roster Richard Blyer, who's a Dunk City alum.
Really?
So yeah, he just got put in the Hall of Fame this year for Dunk City. So it's him and Chris Sale, which are two very, very different pitchers. But so he's a Dunk City alum, and they kind of just have like this weird mix of really bad like old players who are still in the league who are kind of just there, and then they also have this like really, really, really young talent who are supposed to be really good, and they just kind of wind up middling out once they reach the Marlins for some reason. So it's a very, very strange franchise.
I have a very weird discrepancy with the Marlins, and it's not their fault. But whenever we play the Marlins, we've played the Marlins the last 2 years now. I could not watch any of those games because of Scott Garceau and Jesus Aguilera. It's Aguilar! It's Aguilar, Scott!
They also kicked our butts both times, so it's like really annoying to watch that game because we played awful the entire series.
No, 2021, I think they like split the season series 2-2.
They split it. It was they split it, but it was just bad baseball. It was two bad teams facing each other. It was really awful.
That 2020 series where like the Marlins like had the breakout and they were literally starting. What was it, like Eddie Alvarez, the Olympic speed
All the
skater?
COVID.
It was like Winter Olympic silver medalist is now just starting for the Marlins. Like, yeah, sure, okay. They got swept. Like,
They swept us. They 4-0'd us, didn't they? It was 4 games.
Yeah, like, and wasn't that like they swept the Orioles swept the Phillies like right after that? Like, man,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do 60-game seasons again, but like you also like really remember like specific sequences just because there's like fewer games to remember. Like I'm pretty sure it was like the Marlins sweep, then they swept the Phillies, then they swept the Nats, and it was like probably like the weirdest like 10-game sequence in franchise history.
We had playoff hopes up until like the last 10 games.
Yeah.
We were literally we were like 20-30, and we were like, we can make a wild card here. And it was really strange. It was the weirdest time in baseball.
But the gosh dang Marlins made the playoffs in 2020. Like that was.
They not only made the playoffs, they won a series. They won 2 straight games in Wrigley. Okay, so just in general, the NL East just feels like, with the exception of the Nats, it's like there's like interesting vibes with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so going back to Buck and the Mets. Are the Mets like the kind of team that should be a Buck Showalter team? Because like I look at like his like how he got hired with the Orioles is like the Orioles did not have Max Scherzer, they did not have Jacob deGrom, and like the Orioles when they hired Buck were not in a team that was like playoff or bust, and the Mets roster is currently playoff or bust. Like the way I view Buck is he's like a culture change manager. He's someone who like takes a team that's used to losing, that's used to just falling over. I don't know what I was going for there, but just like a team, like building up a team mentally, building up like the culture, building up like the mentality of a team. And I feel like the Mets have like way too high of expectations. Like I think it could still work, but I feel like Buck is like much better suited for a team that didn't sign multiple huge free agents and plays in a massive media market.
Well, I think that the Mets, they still need a culture change.
Yeah.
Because what happened, their GM last year in the offseason, whatever happened with him. Mickey Callaway, whatever happened with him. They still need someone to change like the way that they do things. And I know that those guys were both higher than Buck, but I also think that snowballing off of what you said, Jordan, maybe Buck will kind of bring that back down to reality inside the clubhouse, because I feel like the Mets last year, by the way, I want to go on record and say that before the MLB season started, I absolutely called that the Mets would finish in third place. You can ask people who now hate me. It's not because of the they don't hate me because I said the Mets were a third place team. They hate me for other personal reasons. But I said that the Phillies were a second place team, and they just laughed at me. And they're like, "Where are the Mets going to finish?" I'm like, "In third place." But I think that clubhouse needs someone to bring them back down to reality, because they see all these people coming in, and I know that the fans get ecstatic. They did last year when Steve Cohen came in, brought Lindor in, and was like, "Yeah, we're going to make the World Series." Everybody was saying that, and I see the same thing happening this year. It's the Mets are going to win the 2022 NL East. There's no question about that in my mind. I don't think anyone will come close to that, but they will not make the World Series. I will say that. But Buck Showalter, he will come in. He will do a good job. And as long as he has okay bullpen management, I think that they're going to be a force to be reckoned with within the next 2 to 7 seasons.
Yeah. At the same time, not to immediately contradict myself, I do think he would be useful as like the grown up in the room, like the Lindor McNeil. What was it? Were they arguing if it was like a squirrel or a raccoon? I don't.
Yes,
Was that the
what
two
they
animals,
said.
squirrel and raccoon?
I think so.
I think that was the argument.
Yeah, like they argued over some type of animals, but you shouldn't have your middle infielders presumably getting in a fight and then having that as the cover story. So like I do still think Buck would be better at taking over a team that like isn't as good but wants to like flip the switch. But at the same time, like you do need like a grown up in the room. Like being a manager isn't just bullpen management and lineups and platooning and everything else. Like you're in charge of like 26 employees from God knows how many countries that speak multiple languages and everything else. And like and especially in New York, like I feel like, yeah, like if they hired a first time manager after getting Max Scherzer and getting everyone else, like I just don't think that would have worked. So I do think Buck is like a good decision there, but I also think he would have been even better if like the Rangers hired him. Like the Rangers have had like the wildest offseason ever, and presumably they're going to try to start flipping the switch to contending. And I know he was already with the Rangers, but like I feel like Buck would work better as someone with the Rangers, or like if Scott Survey suddenly resigned from the Mariners, Buck would be like perfect for the Mariners. Like Buck and the Mariners, like the most perfect fit ever. So yeah, I do think Buck works for the Mets just in terms of having a grown up in the room, but in terms of like taking a team that's on the cusp or that's trying to get on the cusp and successfully getting them to the next level, I feel like that's where he excels, and that's what he did in Baltimore. Jay?
But also,
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah,
we
I
just
think
went me, Nolan, me. Let Jay have the floor.
Yeah, I think the Mets are in a really weird spot. I think they've like burned out on their expectations. It's got to be 3 or 4 years in a row now, because they just seem to have like this expectation of making the World Series every single year, and it's almost like if you do that for 3 years in a row, and you keep buying talent and it just doesn't work, it gets to the point where you're kind of just middling, and you need to like find a way to get to the playoffs and be good in the playoffs. And I think that Buck can do that. They finished 77 and 85 last year, and they had this expectation that they were going to all of a sudden break out and win the NL East and make the World Series, and it just didn't happen. So I think that like once you kind of like rebuild from that point, you have to center yourself as an organization and say, listen, we've got this new talent, but it has not worked. So there's something else that needs to happen. And I think that the manager change is one of the biggest kind of changes they can make here.
Nolan?
So what I was going to say is, how lucky are the Mets to have gotten Buck Showalter? Because he's been not out of baseball, but he's been out of a manager position in the MLB since 2017 or 18?
2018. They let him finish the year where they blew it up, and then he didn't do anything after that.
And how many managerial positions in the MLB have been open since Buck Showalter has gotten fired? It's insane to me that it has taken this long for him to find another job. Like when the Giants were looking for a manager, everybody was like, oh, Buck Showalter and the Giants. Good connection right there. When the Padres were looking for a manager, oh, Buck Showalter and the Padres. Good managerial connection.
Yeah. Since you mentioned the Padres, I have no idea how Buck didn't end up managing the Padres, because they like their organizational strategy was hire all of Manny Machado's friends. Yeah. Like they hired Wayne Kirby, they hired Bobby Dickerson. They turned Ryan Flaherty into a coach. Yeah. Like they did everything to like have they did like everything to have like a coaching staff of people that Manny personally likes, except for getting the manager. Like I have no idea how that happened.
It was all of Manny's mentors. It was literally everyone who Manny was probably just like, listen, I like these guys. These guys are all hireable. And then Buck just didn't show up. And I think the Mets needed a manager twice in the past 2 years. The Mets went from Carlos Beltran to nobody to Carlos Beltran again. And I don't know how they didn't pick up Buck then, because it seemed like they had a hole to fill.
I do. Carlos Beltran was definitely the guy that got like the most screwed out of like the whole Astros thing, right? Like to take a detour.
Yeah.
Like AJ Hinch like has a
Definitely.
job again.
Yep.
Like the
Alex Cora has a job again.
yeah, Alex Cora has a job again. Like no one got suspended. Like Carlos, like I don't know. Like I don't want
I mean,
to. I don't know what my position is on like how much people should have faced consequences, but like Carlos Beltran was very objectively the guy that got the most screwed from this.
he seemed to be the guy that was in charge of it though, so I feel like that's where the scrutiny comes from. But at the same time, I don't know how that turns into Alex Cora getting his job back and AJ Hinch having a job with the Tigers if he doesn't.
Right. Because Alex Cora did it with more than one team.
Hmm.
Like, I am very pro Houston Astros winning baseball games now. Like, they have done their stuff, and everybody clowned on them for I don't know how long. They're still doing it, which is pathetic and stupid.
Oh, trash can! Bang bang!
I feel like we got over it with the 2020 season. Like once they got out of that,
Yeah.
like the Dodgers had their way with them, and I guess the rest of the AL East kind of got their way with them, like Oakland and Seattle and whatever. But then, like Seattle had a trade with them midway through the 2021 season, and they traded for Graveman, right? Kendall Graveman, yeah.
Graveman
And-
for Abraham Toro, I think.
Yeah. And so they had a trade. So their relationship is fine. You know, nothing happened, and it's at this point it's probably over. Like I want to say it's over. But
God, I hope. Like
Alex Cora feels like the guy who should be the most scrutinized out of this, and he's not because he did it
Yeah.
with the Red Sox and he did it with the Astros. So it's like he got his job back after a year, and he went back to the playoffs.
and almost beat the Astros to win the
Yeah.
pennant. Like, come on.
But I think I love Dusty Baker. I always have loved Dusty Baker. And I love Jose Altuve. And I love Jose Altuve for the fact because I watched a video on it and how he actually like was against the cheating and all that stuff and how he didn't use it nearly as much as many other people say he did and that whole thing about having the buzzer on his chest or whatever, that was the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I also hate John Boy and his media company and all of those losers over there. So I think that there's some. I just like Yankee fans suffering because the Astros are winning, but then I also like the Astros winning because of Dusty Baker and the players. Like I love Yordan Alvarez, and I know that Jordan is with me on the Yordan Alvarez.
He's gonna hit 600 homers. I'm predicting that, and I'm gonna need to wait like 15 years to see if I'm right. But I'm predicting that.
And like, I don't know. It's just something. There's just something that I like about the Astros, and I don't really know what it is, but I don't care if they go back out and cheat next year, and I know that they're not going to. But anything that make Yankee fans cry on Twitter is just go do it.
Yeah,
Just do
I
it.
think the big takeaway from like the Astros making the World Series again was either A, they're still cheating and got much better at it, which I think is probably not true, or B, they just like tainted a World Series that they probably could have won legitimately for like no good reason. Like they are like the Barry Bonds of like team in terms of like you probably didn't need this. Like you have like I feel like that's the most like frustrating thing. Like if you're gonna cheat, like there should be like a clear benefit to it.
I feel like that's
I'd much rather be Sammy Sosa, like knowing that like the steroids clearly improved my career than Barry Bonds, knowing that I would have been an easy first ballot Hall of Famer, a top 20 player of all time, but instead deciding that I needed to be the god of baseball.
I definitely agree with that. I feel like that's a really good analogy to just say that they're like the Barry Bonds of the World Series, where they definitely were a team that had a lot of talent. They definitely were a team that didn't need to do this. But I mean, you look at guys that like fell off immediately after the 2017 season, like I'm not gonna remember his name, but he went to the Red Sox and then he came back to the Astros.
Marwin Gonzalez.
Gonzalez, yeah. And he is a really bad player who definitely benefited from the cheating, but they didn't need him. He was a utility guy. So I feel like the amount of talent they had, they could have easily won the World Series in 2017, and then they just tainted it. And they're still a really good team, so it's really surprising.
Yeah, and like people leaving and still producing forever proves like you didn't need it. Like I don't have George Springer's stats in front of me, but I feel like he was like pretty good with the Blue Jays this year, where like he's just a good hitter. And like the other thing is, I definitely remember there was like one video where it was like super obvious where they did like the bang bang, and it was like the most hanging changeup I've ever seen. I think it was someone on like the Mets, where it's just like a middle changeup, and like it hit on the train tracks. I was like, you don't need to know what's coming if it's like a hanging changeup. So we weren't planning to do an Astros podcast. Do we have any concluding thoughts on that before returning to our scheduled Buck Showalter topics?
Yes, I do. I want to say one more thing about the Houston Astros. The only problem I have with the Houston Astros is they let us have Mike Elias. That's it. We didn't need Mike Elias. You see what he's doing to the Orioles right now? I know that we'll get into this in a minute, but we signed Rougned Odor and Jordan Lyles this offseason. Now, a few weeks ago, in this group chat DM that we're all in, I couldn't remember Jordan Lyles' name that saved my life. Just like someone that I know. Just someone that I know a little bit about. Like a pitcher that's like somewhat decent, like Cole Hamels, you know?
You're getting
Like-
ahead of the schedule. Come on.
Something just a little bit more. Come on, Mike. If you're watching, Mike.
I wonder who's like the most important person in like the Orioles stratosphere that listens to this. It's presumably someone in our group chat. Okay, yeah, we can do the great Elias argument later, but not tonight. Okay, returning to Buck Showalter. Of course, we have to mention the big Ubaldo-sized elephant in the room, and like I feel like I don't want to argue about like that. I feel like it's objectively a bad decision, but also like to get that roster to a position where it was in the wild card game was like an excellent managing job. Like the offense was very good and very like homer heavy, but like the pitching staff was Kevin Gausman, who was very good or solid, whatever word you want to use. He was a pitcher that would have started on other good teams, and they had Chris Tillman, who was also solid. And then after that, it was like nothing. I made sure I got the exact numbers. They gave 23 starts to Giovanni Gallardo. They gave 13 starts to Tyler Wilson. They gave 12 starts to Mike Wright, and they gave 11 starts to Wade Miley. How many other teams make the playoffs in the AL East giving that many starts to people that shouldn't have been starting? Wade Miley is apparently good now, but Gallardo shouldn't have been starting for a playoff team. Tyler Wilson should have been starting for a playoff team. Mike Wright should have been starting for a playoff team. Like there's like Tyler Wilson and Mike Wright both went to like the KBO within years of being on a playoff roster. So again, I have no interest in arguing about the Ubaldo decision. I think it's objectively not good, but like the management needed in the 162 games prior to that, to the point where everyone was in a position to analyze how he handled a wildcard game. Like that matters.
Yeah, I definitely think he was a good manager for the team. Like Wade Miley right now is still in the league, but he's throwing 90-mile-per-hour fastballs, and like he's very much not the same pitcher he was, I think, ever. But still, it's like the Orioles have always had a pitching problem. Like, and I think that you just don't get over that with a manager. I think that a manager doesn't really change that. It just makes it easier to kind of say, listen, we're working with what we've got here, and we made the playoffs. So I definitely think that he was like a good manager, and I definitely think he had the right stuff. You don't do anything with the little talent we had, you know?
Yeah, and I just sidetrack a little bit because I have a question, and I want to hear everybody's opinion. Because as Jay just said, the Orioles have never been a good pitching team. So, John Means, and I posed this question earlier in the baseball season. John Means is the best starting pitcher that the Orioles have had since who?
Eric Bedard.
I want to say Messina, but yeah, Bedard probably.
I was gonna say Mike Messina as well. But
I think Bedard pre-trade was good. Post-trade he fell off.
Yeah,
obviously.
like the reason they got that haul for Bedard was because like he was pretty good. Like
Mhm.
I feel like we
I hate
definitely
awkwardly typing in like baseball reference while we're recording, so I'm gonna do that.
I just did the same thing. So
I was gonna say like
yeah. I think that Bedard was like we should have done the same thing with John Means. Like I'm afraid of John Means at this point. He's a
Oh,
very good
yes.
pitcher, but he throws
I-
94 mile per hour fastballs. He is
Mhm.
going to get hammered at some point by the Yankees in the next 10 years. Like if we keep him for that
absolutely.
long, the Yankees are going to absolutely demolish this guy.
And
Like
I love John Means. He's my favorite pitcher on the Orioles right now because he's probably the only pitcher worth being favored on the Orioles right now.
I was gonna say like what's the competition?
But
Right.
there was some pretty strong evidence that he was using some sticky stuff before they came down on this. And I think that, you know, he definitely was. Post sticky stuff, he wasn't as good as he was prior to that.
he was
So
injured,
it does
but
concern me.
Yeah, that's
It's-
my thing. He
he
got
had
injured
yeah.
before like the sticky stuff, so like I don't know who else was like rehabbing while also trying to teach themselves like how to pitch in a brand new
Right.
way.
You're right.
So, like give him an entire off season of like no sticky stuff and see how it turns out.
And we'll see
Like,
what happens.
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
that's like the big thing. Like, oh no, Means is like bad because he didn't have sticky stuff. Like he was like he might have. I
He
have
had a
no
torn
idea.
lat, I think, right?
Yeah, I
or
don't know what
some
the injury
lat
was,
strain.
but like we're coming back from an injury is weird, and the MLB is suddenly telling you that what you were doing to pitch is now actually illegal is difficult. And if you're combining both of them, like I'm willing to shrug off like his first like however many post injury starts because I feel like he did finish the year like relatively strong. But
Was Wade Miley's no hitter before the sticky stuff ban?
Yes.
I feel like it was. It had to be.
Yeah, it was
There's
in
no way
May.
that 90 mile per hour fastball just threugh.
yeah, wasn't it like
no-hitter.
literally like 2 days after Means got it, or was that someone else?
It was. I think it was like the same week.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like
It
Means
definitely
got it, and
was.
then like Spencer
Spencer,
got
Oh,
it,
yeah,
and then like
Tigers
Wade
got it,
Miley
yeah.
got it. I was like, what the hell is going
No,
on?
Torkelson's the third baseman.
And then Kluber got one right in that area too.
Yeah, like there were like 4 no hitters in the span of like 30 days. And I was like, oh my god, is baseball ruined? And then like I don't think there was like
There
more
wasn't
than
one for
one
the rest
no
of the
hitter
year. I
after
don't
that,
think.
or no more no hitters after that.
I think
So-
after the sticky stuff, I don't recall a single no hitter after the sticky stuff was banned. I'm not certain.
Yeah, are
on
you
that.
typing
I
in
hope-
2021
I
Jay
am.
no
is-
hitters? Okay, I
I
was gonna
hope
say
Jay is
someone look that
checking
up.
me on that.
Um.
But
The combined no hitter with the Brewers.
That doesn't count.
That doesn't
Combined
count.
no hitters do not
All right.
count.
I
I bet the
Tyler
Rays could do a
Gilbert.
combined
Tyler
no-
Gilbert.
Oh yeah, okay, I do. Yeah, the D-backs guy.
Gilbert.
Mm-hmm.
He was on the D-backs.
that
Craig
dude.
Kimbrell was
Oh.
post. Tapera and Kimbrell were the same. Wait, no. What is this? What am I looking at? Yeah. No, Oh, that was the Chicago combined was post ban.
The White Sox or the Cubs?
The Cubs. The Cubs
I
had a
was gonna say,
combined
'cause
with
didn't the
their
White Sox
only
trade for
bullpen.
Kimbrel and Tempera.
I think. Yes.
I know they traded for Kimbrel. I don't know if they
I
traded
know.
for the other
Yeah, I
guy.
don't know about Tapera. I don't know. I also want to bring this up because this is way off kilter. It's about the Orioles, but it's just like
We have completely
I was
abandoned
thinking-
our outline.
it's okay. It's still about the Orioles. I was thinking when we were talking about John Means, there are at most 5 people on our roster right now that I want to keep. Like you can blow up the other 35. I don't care, but I'll give you my 5 because I thought long and hard about this. Mullins, duh,
Yeah.
of course.
Mhm.
Mountcastle,
Yeah.
duh,
Yeah.
of course. My 3 next ones are there's a 5th that I am there's a 6th that I am considering putting on this list, but Ramon Urias, God, I love that man so much.
Okay, interesting.
That's fair. I agree with that. Yeah.
Tyler Wells, because
Yeah.
Yeah.
great guy.
Just a Rule 5 guy, you know.
Austin Hayes is my 5th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Give me Tanner Scott as my 6th.
Ooh.
I understand the thought process. I just like I've just had enough of watching him. Like if he goes to the Giants and becomes like the best left-handed reliever ever, I can live with that. Like at a certain point, like you can see someone's potential, but you just like do not want to actively watch them anymore.
Listen, give me Tanner Scott throwing to Adley Rutschman and see what happens. I feel like throwing to a terrible catcher is a problem, and I just don't want to see him throw any more fucking discuses that just like land on the backstop. Like, I just
Yeah.
it gets to the point where you're like, I just don't want to see that happen anymore. And I feel like with a good catcher, it can be better, but it's
I
just
would
a problem.
take any day of the week. I would take Jeff Mathis, Tanner Scott. Boom, give me that.
It does seem weird. Like they're like backup catchers or whatever. Like none of them seem like super experienced. Like it was Jacob Nottingham or whatever. Like get like a Kurt Casale. Get someone who's like 34, who's just like permanently been a backup catcher. Like I think Caleb Joseph is. I think this happened like literally yesterday. Like Caleb Joseph is apparently trying to will himself like back to the
Yeah, he
Orioles, which I mean,
changed his
Yeah,
profile
yeah,
picture
sure, why
back to
not?
Bay Sox.
he's super interested. He actually like really wants to come back,
I would
and
love that.
I dig it.
I would
But
love that
like,
so much.
yeah, I feel like he's like the greatest guy to do that job aside from like Matt Wieters. But like, why are we gonna bring back Matt Wieters? You know?
I was gonna say I
Why
don't know if
not?
Matt Wieters has anything left as a player, but like give him like whatever Ryan Flaherty's job is, the Padres. Like make him like
Right.
director of like player analytics or whatever. Just come up with a made up title where you can sit in the dugout and like just like be like Adley's like personal guy, because he literally was Adley a decade before Adley, like the switch hitting catcher, the savior of the franchise, all that. Like I mean, Wieters was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Like for however much we think like the Adley hype exists. Like the Wieters hype was so much more. Look like yeah, like a prospect getting on like Sports Illustrated for like baseball, like basically never happens. Like as best as I can tell, like off the top of my head, the people that have been on Sports Illustrated before making their MLB debut is like Matt Wieters and Bryce Harper. I'm sure there's like a third guy if you go back far enough, but like
What a
that
club.
doesn't happen. So yeah, I don't know how. I mean, it might not. I don't think it needs to be an official role, but like I would like to have Matt Wieters have some sort of regular correspondence with Adley, because he has been there, he has done that. You can argue if he lived up to his potential, but he was a solid, really useful catcher who was on multiple playoff teams, and like I feel like he has a pretty unique perspective of being the savior of the franchise Orioles switch hitting catcher. Like I don't know how many times you're gonna have a prospect where someone did like that exact same thing a decade beforehand.
I cannot wait until 10 years from this moment when we have another podcast going and there is another switch hitting catcher that we drafted in the first round that is in AAA getting ready to be promoted to the MLB. God, I can't wait for that.
It's gonna be the trilogy.
This is gonna be our dynasty. We used to have a dynasty at like third baseman. We used to have a dynasty at center fielders. We're gonna have a catcher dynasty. It's just switch hitting catchers.
Which is a really good position to build a team around, by the way.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I have no idea how good Adley will be versus Bobby Witt, but like I feel like it's harder to find like a decent catcher than it is to find a decent shortstop. So even if Bobby Witt ends up like being better than Adley, I'm still very happy with that decision, just because of like the relative value of a good catcher versus like the relative value of a good shortstop in terms of if you don't have one, how difficult is it to find one?
And I mean, you look at like offensive numbers for catchers throughout history, and you're talking about Yadier Molina being a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Put him anywhere else on a baseball field, and there is no question that he will never even sniff the ballot for the Hall of Fame. But
That's
he's-
honestly what
Second
makes,
base, maybe.
yeah. That's what makes Mike Piazza so impressive. Like he just like invented like hitting as
Yeah.
a catcher. Like I don't have like his like numbers of where he ranks
Wasn't
for
Johnny
catchers,
Bench
but
good?
I feel like I'm
Yes.
pretty sure Piazza was
Yeah.
a better hitter than Bench.
Yeah, Piazza was a better hitter
Piazza
than Bench,
was-
but I feel
yes.
like Bench was like the one who invented like hitting as a catcher. He was like,
Yeah.
but he was also an average guy because it was like the 80s or whatever, the 70s or 80s. So he
70s.
wasn't like a Piazza hitter, but
You know who's
Yeah,
overlooked
I'm not
in this
pulling up like
conversation,
all
too?
time catcher stats, but yeah.
Gary Carter. Gary Carter.
Yeah. But like the list of like legitimately great hitting catchers is like very small compared to like every other position. So if Adley is like an 850 career OPS or whatever, that is outstanding. That is great. That is legitimately like a Hall of Famer. Okay.
And
I do.
he makes really good TikToks, so I gotta love him.
Yeah. Okay. I do want to go back to the wild card game for like 1 second. Like The other thing is like the offense gets completely let off the hook for that because of the Ubaldo Britton decision. In 11 innings, they had 2 runs, 4 hits, 1 walk. Trumbo homering was their only extra base hit. Like that is an atrocious offensive performance and a huge game, and like no one talks about it because of the decision. Like it sucks that they did that, but like you shouldn't have been in a position where it was tied 2-2 in the 11th. You should have like 4 runs. Like I'm not asking for like an offensive onslaught, but like a couple more runs wins that game, and you had a pretty good offense all year. Like it's always been funny to me that Ubaldo is the scapegoat rather than everyone in the lineup besides Mark Trumbo.
I think that Seth Smith should be the scapegoat for that game. I hate Seth Smith with a passion.
Wasn't he not even on the 2016 Orioles?
No, he was. He definitely was.
Are you
Seth
sure? I thought
Smith-
they traded Gallardo for Seth
100%.
Smith in 2017.
I am 100% sure. There's
Are
no way
you-
that he's not on that
Are
team.
you sure? I swear to God, they traded Gallardo for Seth Smith in 2017.
He's not on the roster. That doesn't change my argument that he shouldn't be the scapegoat, though.
Yeah, we're just gonna go back like a year and scapegoat him. I think that the Britain decision doesn't change anything. Honestly, I think you go into the top of the 11th or the bottom of the 11th with Britain, and nothing changes.
We
They
still lose.
don't do anything at the top of the
Yeah.
12th
They were not
because their
I don't
offense
think
was silent. Like
Yeah, they were either going to run into a homer or they were going to have 2 runs until like the next day.
right.
Yeah.
It really seemed like they just like I was watching this and I was probably in like a bar or something watching this or like a restaurant or something. I remember it was the 11th and we were like, what is happening? Like we literally did nothing. We've had no offense the entire game, and so I think scraping together 2 doubles in the extra innings we had was our only chance, and it wasn't happening. I really think that Britain just delayed the inevitable. If we bought Britain.
I agree. Like I feel like if like we would have been like, damn, Ubaldo allowing that homer in the 14th inning it might not have been
Right.
like I agree. Like that was just speeding up the inevitable. Like they were not scoring unless they ran into another homer.
And so that's the point where you can kind of almost understand Buck's decision. It was like a terrible decision, but it's at the same time, I would rather use a starting pitcher who wasn't going to pitch the next 3 games if you go into the next series versus using your closer and then all of a sudden going 14, 15 innings with your closer and like not having another game where you can use him. Like I feel like using 3 innings of him would be
There's
awful.
no way they would have done that. Like I feel like
No.
they would have been realistic and like, all right, well, it's time for Ubaldo.
Yeah.
Well, what happens in that 2016 AL wildcard game if the Manfred Man starts on second base at the inning?
Oh
That's a
God!
good
I don't
question.
even- Well, no, they don't do that in the playoffs. Still, like
Okay,
I thought they
well,
did.
still, like, let's.
no, they
No,
don't
they
do
don't.
they don't do
No.
it for the playoffs.
Yeah.
How many playoff games even went to extras this year? Like the NL wild card game did, right?
I want to
Is there
say not a
only one
lot.
extra innings games like the entire playoffs. Like I can't really remember anything else.
I don't remember.
Did
how
the
much
Red Sox?
playoff baseball I watched.
I feel like the Red Sox might have.
Oh yeah. The Red Sox
Yeah.
walked off the series, so there might have been
Yeah.
like 2 the entire postseason. So okay, we're hitting 45 minutes pretty soon, and I'm a firm believer that like that should generally be where you try to end the podcast. Do we have any other closing thoughts about Buck Showalter, the wild card game, the city of Toronto, the Houston Astros cheating, what you had for Christmas, etc., etc.?
I do want to say that Toronto, the city, is probably a pretty nice place, but the Blue Jays they got to get a new stadium. Like, look at Rogers Center. That is the Tropicana Field of Canada. It literally is. And I liked Tropicana Field when I went. It wasn't even that bad of a place. It really wasn't.
Yeah, like
Living there, yeah, it's not that bad. Tropicana Field definitely is like really, really needs to be replaced, but it's certainly not a terrible ballpark. But I feel like the Rogers Center just feels too much like the '80s. Like it's the wall is too high. It's a hotel attached to the stadium. Like there's no fans on the field in the outfield. It's a terrible construction.
Okay. Yeah. I feel like the fact that you never have a rain delay is a kind of nice perk, but I still know if it's worth it from like an aesthetics, that's the word, right, perspective. Like it's just not visually pleasant. Like I feel like you can do a retractable roof and not have it look hideous. Like I think Miller Park looks kind of cool.
I like Seattle, whatever they call
Yeah,
it.
yeah, like Safeco looks cool. Like I feel like you can make like a neat looking park and still just
They
plop a roof on it.
they fixed Marlins Park. It doesn't have the hideous statue anymore. And
I
going there,
like
it
the
is.
Dinger statue.
I also like the statue.
You're
As
overruled.
someone who lives in the area, not having to see the statue was definitely a good thing. It's a really really nice park. It's Marlins Park. If you just put Marlins Park in Tampa, I would go to a game. I would go to like probably more than I would go to every Orioles game that was in Tampa if they had a park like Marlins Park.
Okay. Think we're gonna wrap it up there. Jay, Nolan, thank you for joining us. I hope both of you have a lovely New Year's and everyone listening has a lovely New Year's. This has been Pod Valaika. I am your host, Jordan Katz. We hope you have a great morning, great afternoon, great night, whenever you're listening to this. Signing off.